Welcome back to the High Income Health Expert Challenge. We're on day 2, and in this day, we are going to be talking about the 7 keys to selling while serving. If you've ever had a challenge charging a price for your health advice, or when it comes to teaching health, you just light up, you enjoy it, it's so fun and easy. But then when you start talking about money or compensation or payments for your products, your programs, your services, or your knowledge, now that's when things start feeling a little dicey or uncomfortable, or maybe you felt that selling is kind of sleazy, or you don't have a problem with selling per se, you just have a problem with finding people who are willing to pay. Then today, I've got good news for you. We're going to be covering these 7 keys that are going to unlock new levels of service and opportunity. And especially when you have a heart to serve and you want to help people at the highest level, we're going to be talking about that today. So let's dive in. The first key to selling while serving, we're going to be unmasking what I believe is one of the biggest lies about selling that many health educators believe. You know, there was a popular film back in the day called The Field of Dreams, and this whole premise was based on this idea that if you build it, they will come. Where you plow down a cornfield and you build a baseball field, and then they're like, where are we going to fill the stadiums? Just build it and they will come. How many of us have ever heard this marketing myth that a good product is going to naturally sell itself? Type I have in the chat below if that's you. The reality is, good products don't sell themselves without good selling systems. And I'll prove it to you. Actually in the VIP session, we were just talking about how there was one of our clients, they were attending this diabetes reversal, insulin resistance training. And there are large health educators out there who are teaching you're going to be able to heal if you stop eating vegetables, you don't eat the fiber, and you just fill your body filled with all this meat and this carnivore diet, and this is how you're going to reduce the insulin. And you'll know that there are people out there who have less information, who their product is not even that truthful. They don't have a better program, but they're making more money than you. Why is that? Because it is not the product that sells itself, it's the marketing systems. And without a good system for selling or system for marketing, which is getting your message to the masses, then your products aren't going to sell. They're not going to move themselves. So this is why it's really important to understand the marketing methods that are working today in this modern economy. And I hate to say it, but publish and pray is not a real marketing strategy. A lot of times people will focus on creating a course, creating a product, creating a service, and they'll put a lot of attention into creating the book, creating the coaching program, and little to no effort in marketing the program that they just created. But we can't just publish and hope that it happens. In fact, I believe in prayer. I believe that we are a praying business. We pray with our clients. We pray before we speak. We pray on even many of our sales calls. We'll pray with people. We'll pray for them. But is it wise to lean on a shovel and pray to God for a hole? Absolutely not. Because while we are to pray as though everything depends upon God, we can act and work as though everything depends upon us. It's a cooperation of the two that accomplishes incredible things, a human and divine effort. And how many of you believe that God wants to cooperate with you in your business? Type I do in the chat. And if you see that there is action to take, if you see that this training and these 5-day challenges is an answer to your prayers, how many of you are willing to take action? I want you to type action in the chat if you're willing to act out on your prayers, if you do see that God is starting to answer some of the concerns or questions or the direction and guidance that you've been looking for. Because when it comes to marketing, this isn't a new idea. In fact, a lot of people think marketing is manipulation. In fact, marketing is not manipulation. Even Paul the Apostle understood about good marketing. In the book of Acts, chapter 17, it says of Paul Therefore disputed he, Paul, in the synagogue with the Jews and with the devout persons. And where was it? In the market daily with them that met with him. Why? Why was Paul in the market? Because that's where the traffic is. That's where the foot traffic, that's where the people, that's where the attention is of the masses. And marketing, I find one of the best definitions of marketing is, simply put, health marketing is bringing your message to the masses. It's what allows you to be able to be heard in a noisy world, that allows you to stand out in a crowded place so that people can even get to know or bring to you their awareness that you even exist in the first place. And that's why the first key to selling while serving is recognizing that good health products don't sell themselves without good selling systems. And if we don't, I learned that if I didn't learn marketing, then my message would die on my lips. The first 5 years doing cooking classes, health lectures, and seminars all across the nation, it was, I realized that if I didn't figure out how to market the value, the messages, and the programs that I had, the DVDs I was publishing at the time, then I wouldn't be able to bless a single soul, and I couldn't afford that. So that's when I started learning marketing. So the key number 2, what this key is going to unlock for you is how to have people lined up out the door with cash in hand, ready to pay whatever you charge for your programs. How many of you would like to have a line of buyers who are eager to join your program? The key is understanding that you don't attract the buyer you desire, you attract the buyer you are. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that those who refuse to buy will be unable to charge. In other words, that if you are a resistant buyer, you will attract resistant buyers. If you are someone who, what you want to do is you want to become a person who genuinely loves to pay people. And what I mean by that is, like, I find that one of the reasons why God has blessed me with sales is because I enjoy paying people, and I would much rather cut a check for speed, cut a check for clarity. I'd rather, why try to figure it out myself when I could invest in other people's experience and download decades of experience in days? And understanding that, I know that because I'm easy to sell to, there's other people who also like to buy, who think like I do. But I wasn't always like that. In fact, there was a time, there was a time where I had a hard time buying, and I was always looking to cut expenses or save, or looking for discounts and trying to get things for free. And because I had such a challenge with actually buying stuff, I believed everyone that I was selling to also had a challenge for buying stuff. That they were always trying to penny pinch and try to get the steepest discount or get as much as they can for free. As long as I had this freebie, free-seeking mentality, trying to do everything without paying anything, then I believe that nobody can afford. People can't buy this stuff. Nobody has the money, because that's what I thought about myself. In fact, I had a conversation with a prospect at the time, and she was like, I've been going to these free podcasts and these challenges. I've been attending these events and trying to piece this piece together for my business, and I'm just not getting this profitable program. I want to get sales, but people can't afford it. I'll do these consultations and they're not interested. I'm doing these podcast interviews and they're just not bringing in business. I don't know what's going on. And I shared with her my story about how for a long time I didn't invest in myself. And because I was too trying to get all this free information, I wasn't coming together. And it wasn't until I actually invested in my first $1,000 course. I bought it when I didn't have the money, when I couldn't afford it, I've never invested it myself at that level before. I was scared of how is it going to happen? But once I did that, I began to realize the power of premium mentorship. And I started to realize how free information is worth every penny. But it wasn't until I invested in myself that I began to realize the difference between premium information and all the free stuff on YouTube University and Google and AI and stuff. There's a big gulf between the two. And as I started to invest since then, I've bought multiple $1,000 courses, because each time I've expanded, I've grown, I've learned more, I've applied to my business, and it's been very helpful. But it wasn't until I was willing to cut a check that I became better at selling, and I began to believe that other people were willing to cut a check too. And I shared with her that part of the challenge is if you're unwilling to buy, you think other people are just as difficult to sell to. But part of the way you become someone who genuinely loves to pay people is taking that step to make an investment in your future, in your business, in your dream. And she took that step. She actually had to like use 3 different cards and organizations to pay for our program. But once she joined in our Skills Unlimited program, she was able to finally get a profitable program. She was able to get sales. We helped her to see exactly what content to create that converts. She was finally able to sign up people for programs, not only the calls, but they started convert. And we reframed and retrained her on how to conduct consultation calls so they don't just waste your time, but they actually add value to the person you're speaking to and allow you to create more clients. And she was like, I'm so thankful. Like a couple months after being in our program, she's like, thank you so much for guiding me through this process. I couldn't do it without you. And it's really rewarding. But the flip that switch, the switch that flipped on was becoming the person who genuinely loves to pay people. And that's when we start to attract. I know that whenever I'm in a sales environment, there's only 2 great outcomes of being sold to. I love being sold to, and the reason why is because there's only one of 2 great things. The first great outcome, anytime that someone is selling to me, is I'm gonna see an example of what they did, and I'm gonna not just pay attention to what they say, but how it made me feel. I'm gonna be like, that was kind of icky. I'm not gonna be happy with that. I'll have an unpleasant experience. And say someone's using false scarcity or or they're lying or dishonesty through, and you could just kind of sense that. Or maybe it's high pressure sales or things of that nature. And I'm going to notice how it makes me feel. I'm not going to buy. And I'm going to determine to never put my clients through that experience. And I will be a better salesperson as a result of that. The second great outcome that will happen is I'm going to listen to what the person is doing and what their process is and how I've experienced that. And I'm going to notice, wow, I really like that. And I'm going to learn. I'm going to put my super student lenses on and not just study what they're saying, but what they're doing. And even like as you're listening to me, don't just pay attention to what I'm saying, like notice the process. And I'm going to see an experience that I like, I'm going to buy, and then I'm going to love that experience. And that's something I will see, how could I apply that or model that process in my sales experience for my clients? And I will be a better salesperson as a result. So what I've noticed is that people who are great at sales, health educators who are thriving at some of the highest levels, they're not afraid to be sold to. While struggling health educators, they'll attend an event, they'll listen to a training, they'll go through something, and they'll get to the part where they're making an offer and they're like, oh, they're just trying to pitch me something. And they'll go walk off, or they'll pull up their phones, they'll start getting distracted, or they'll tune out and they're like, oh, I don't need to hear this. And then they get upset. It's like, oh, they're trying to sell me something. But successful health educators, when the sales starts happening, they pull out their notes and they start taking copious notes, and they're paying attention. They're underlying. Like literally, what I've done is I've found presentations where people have been selling health programs that have made over $10 million on the sales message, and transcribe the message and highlight what was the phrase, what was the message, why they do that, what kind of questions were they asking, and noticing the question to sentence ratio, and just studying good sales speakers, people who have profitable programs, people who have profitable health messages. Notice like what are they doing differently than struggling health educators? And by studying success, one thing that you'll find is that success leaves clues. And there is a system for selling. And when you can understand the system, then you could take notes and start applying them in your own. Whereas you don't really get that if you just tune out whenever you're in a selling environment. So instead of tuning out and leaning out, you can tune in and lean in and pay more attention. When you become a super student of sales, you get better and you start to improve, and it changes the way that we look at sales. So how many of you are ready to attract excited buyers to your products and programs? Type yes in the chat below. Part of the second key to selling while serving is to become a person who genuinely loves to pay people. This is one of the best ways to be able to attract high-paying clients who are eager to pay what you charge. And And then key number 3, this is what I have found is the number one thing preventing health educators from serving at some of the highest levels. Now, we want to serve people. We like helping others. And the reality is, if you have a solution to people's health problems, maybe you could help them, parents, to be able to connect better with their children. Then if you have a solution that could solve a problem, then you have a moral obligation to sell that to as many people as you can, as fast as you can. In fact, the scripture says in Proverbs chapter 11, verse 26, King Solomon, which, by the way, King Solomon is the wisest and wealthiest man in human history. Do you think we can learn a thing or two about maybe business or marketing or finances from the wisest and wealthiest man who ever lived? I think so. So what does he have to tell us about this subject? It says in verse 26, "He that withholdeth the corn, the people shall curse him, but blessing shall be upon the head of him that selleth it." Notice how the scripture doesn't say there's a blessing on those who just give it away for free. There's a blessing on those who selleth it. What we find is that selling is a good idea because selling is a God idea. In fact, I would submit to you that selling is God's established plan to create wealth, to financially support and sustain the message and the mission that He has put in your heart to pursue. And if we do not learn to sell and learn to sell well, it will be very difficult to sustain the message that we have. In fact, every dollar that you ever receive is because someone sold something to someone for a profit. Money does not circulate or transfer without salespeople and entrepreneurs. They are the heartbeat of the economy. Without selling, there is no transfer of finances and circulation. And when there's no circulation, that's what causes a depression in the economy or recession in the economy. And you might say, like, if you think about it, every business that has money is because there's salespeople and entrepreneurs. But you might say, well, that's not true. I'm a secretary. I have a secretarial job. I don't work in sales. Well, the only reason that every secretarial position in a business has a salary or an income is because there's salespeople in that business who are selling to customers, earning income that is paying the paycheck for the accountants or the receptionists or whoever it is. And you might say, well, that's not I don't get paid because of sales. I work for the government. The only reason why the government has money to pay their employees is because they steal the money from entrepreneurs and wealthy people who are making money through selling, and they take that money and then they give it to their employees. Even if you look at nonprofits, every dollar that you ever have that is to give to charity or that as a nonprofit ever received is because someone somewhere sold something for a profit. And it's because there was a sales that was made, that money was put into the donor's possession, and that was donated to charity. So every dollar that you ever receive in your pocket is because of salespeople and entrepreneurs. The sooner you realize that God created the economy in a way that allows the freedom to sell, and that selling creates freedom from every person involved in the transaction. And we'll look at that a little deeper. In fact, Jesus even shows in Matthew 13:35, he has this parable where he's talking about, and again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a merchant man seeking goodly pearls. Now that's kind of interesting. Merchant man, that's a salesperson. That's an entrepreneur. That's someone who sells. And Jesus is representing himself as a heavenly salesperson. And notice the next verse, who, when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. So in other words, what we see from the words of Jesus is that the key to buying what you desire is to sell what you have. Many of you coming here is you have a knowledge, you have a process, you have an ability to transform people's lives. And Jesus is showing that by selling what we have, maybe it's a product, maybe it's a program, maybe it's a book that you have in you, by selling what you have is a key to buying what you desire. What do you desire? Maybe you desire to invest in mentors. Maybe you desire to have a reliable vehicle, or maybe you desire to have a home in a specific location or at a specific capacity or acreage, or maybe you desire to be able to sometimes it's just a desire to cover the living expenses without having to trade your time for money. The key to buying what you desire is by selling what you have. And when you can grasp this, it becomes so much easier to make purchases, not out of fear, but from a place of abundance, because you realize that creativity to serve people and you're serving them is through the selling, and that if you don't sell them, you cannot serve them. In fact, what we see, that was a quote from Zig Ziglar. He said something I'll never forget. He recognized that let's say he had an opportunity to speak at a seminar for like 60 minutes or so. It is quite, it is very unrealistic to think that we're going to radically transform someone's life with only 60 minutes of speaking to them. I used to teach my health talks where I'm going to shove everything I know about the subject in 60 minutes or less, and I'm going to just give them everything that they need to be able to succeed, and that's my goal. But a lot of times when we're over here trying to, what we call over-deliver is actually overwhelming. And what happens, you'll find a lot when speaking, is that the more you teach, the less people want to buy. Because what happens is you give them this big stack of things to do and they're like, well, I need to go work on these things first before I could even think of purchasing your program. So they're so overwhelmed, and a confused mind always says no. Confused mind always says no. So one of the best things you can do if you have an opportunity to speak before an audience is not to try to give them everything up front, because you're talking about changing long-term habits, changing their diet, changing the beliefs that they have about food. Maybe it's exercise. Maybe there's new habits. There's things that is not going to be changed in 60 minutes. There's some long-term adjustments and tweaking. So one of the most ethical and most honorable things you could do is sell them into an audio program, a coaching program, a course, or something that could provide them a long-term feedback or guidance or support through their transformation. And this is exactly why Zig Ziglar said this line that if I don't sell them, I cannot serve them. Because when you're able to sell them this long-term mentorship program, it's allowing them to actually get the results they're looking for. If you're trying to stuff everything that you know in 60 minutes, it's like a fire hose to the face when you're not selling them something. You want to speak in a way that will help them to make an informed decision so that they could work with you and have the real lasting transformation that's going to outlast your influence. Doesn't that make sense? How many of you want to serve more people? Type serve in the chat below. In fact, that's exactly when I shared this is what Hollis and Alpha and Shantoya, they were speaking. He listened to that. He's like, that's exactly what I've been doing. This makes so much sense. He said, I've been telling everybody everything that I know in 60 minutes or less. I've been trying to do that. And he was making minimal sales when he was done speaking. So he attended our signature speech workshop. And in the next 2 weeks, he spoke at an event where he sold more at his next event than he did in the last 12 years of being a health educator. And he was applying the principles that we were sharing. He not only sold out at the event where he was selling, but he even had back orders on his online store that was sold out. And him and his wife, they got on our coaching call the next week and they're like, I've never seen anything like it. This is so amazing. They were excited about it because they changed the way that they would present and what they'd emphasize. And by being able to be intentional with your message and crafting a signature speech, that signature speech made all of his speaking to be more profitable after that. So how many of you would like to have oversubscribed products and programs when you speak at events? Type me in the chat below. If you're like, I would like to, whenever I open my mouth, I want people to be able to line up and sign up and desire to invest in the programs. Because here's the reality. If you have a solution that can help people, if someone is sick, maybe they're overweight, maybe the parents aren't getting along with their kids and their kids are unhealthy, or you are able to, with your mouth, sell them a program, and through joining into your program, purchasing your program, you can have them go from sick to healthy, happy, and doing well, then you're actually doing a disservice if you do not sell it to them. You are forcing and if you don't have a mentorship program, you're forcing your best paying clients to go to your competitors who are not going to love them the way you do, who's not going to teach them the truth the way you know. They're not going to serve them the way you can. They're not going to show up the way that you will. You're forcing them to go spend their money, which they're going to spend it somewhere. Maybe it's the mainstream medical advice, which we know some challenges with that, a lot of contraindications and mishaps and medical mistakes, and that are taking the lives of hundreds of thousands of people more than any other chronic disease. And there's a lot of this going down, and you're forcing them to go spend their money to someone else who's not going to help them the way you can. Instead of thinking that selling is somehow less spiritual or selling is not a service, recognize that you're doing a disservice if you don't sell them. And if you do not sell them, you can't serve them, because by selling them into your program, you're able to help serve them at some of the highest levels possible. How many of you are ready to serve people through your health message? Type serve in the chat below. One of the ways that we're able to do this, it's very important distinction here, because working with a lot of health educators, in whether it's on like bone and joints, whether it's about vitality or longevity, maybe it's weight loss, maybe we've worked with a variety of different topics and areas. And one question that I often get asked is people want to know, Enoch, help me. How do I handle these sales objections? How do I address the concerns? I don't have enough time. It's too expensive. I can't afford it. Or other people, how are you different than other people? They want to know how can they handle these objections. But the way I teach sales is very, very different than most sales trainers, because instead of handling objections, I like to focus on pre-handling objections. Because when you're overcoming objections, if you have to overcome the objections, it's already too late. Instead, what we want to do is eliminate them entirely in your signature speech, so that by the time they even hear the offer, they don't have objections. They have their checks ready, their checkbooks open and ready to purchase. So this approach is very different, and I began to learn this from health educators who were able to make millions of dollars in their 20s, and they were selling from stage, and they were doing presentations. And the first time I heard that this one guy, they wanted to talk about overcoming objections, he's like, well, I don't really get objections. Objections don't really come up because I handle them in my presentation. And in my signature speech, as I address them one by one, by the time I present, then it's like they don't have objections, they're just ready to sign up. The first time I heard that, I was like, what? Teach me. I want to know. How do I do that? And then I started to learn and train and practice, and then it started getting to a point where people would sign up and they'd be ready, and they're filling out order forms, joining our health programs. And I was like, this works, this is amazing. And in fact, it's a biblical principle, because Proverbs 27:12, the scripture says, a prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. So in other words, if you're prudent or wise, if you have forethought, if you put some thought into it, you can see the objection, see the evil, see the concern that comes up. If you already know that every single person who is going to buy or invest in a health mentorship program, health or information products or books, courses, coaching, or community, online events, anyone who's going to invest in that, there's fundamental questions that have to be asked, like, why should I listen to you? How are you different from others? How much does it cost? And do I have the time to do it? Does it actually work? Do I have the resources, the support to do it? There's already questions, and because we've sold so many programs and help health educators to do likewise, we know what those questions are. So we craft that. When I'm coaching health educators, one of the first things we'll do is we will make a list of what are the universal objections that people have based on your product, because it's different concerns you have to address if you're selling a course versus coaching versus a lifestyle center, which we've worked with all of them, and versus a speaking engagement. But when you know what objections need to be addressed beforehand, depending on what you're selling, then it really simplifies your speaking. You know exactly what to say. So instead of being reactive to when they say it, then you just kind of bounce back and you're battling and boxing and fighting and going back and forth. You don't have any of that, because you can be proactive by expressing it in advance. Because here's a sales tip. Generally speaking, whoever is the first to express the concern wins. And what I mean by that is, if your prospect has to speak up and then they start sharing the concern, and then you're trying to like combat or battle what they're saying, then that you've already lost the battle most of the times. If you could express it in advance, where you tell people what to focus on and what meaning to attach to it before it comes to the mind, before it comes to the attention, then they're already going to know how to address that, and they're ready to move forward. So that eliminates the objections, which, by the way, how many of you would like to eliminate buying objections entirely when you speak? Type yes in the chat if you would like to just stop receiving no's and you start receiving more yeses in your messaging. So key number three is recognizing that selling is your moral obligation to serve people. This isn't less spiritual. It's not less service. It's actually, selling is some of the most honorable and service-oriented professions in the marketplace. And the sooner that we come to terms with that and feel good about that, as a speaker, you are introducing someone into a new normal. You're introducing them into a new reality. Maybe their family is not getting along. Maybe their family is sick or unhealthy. They're struggling. But you're able to introduce them to solutions that can change their life, their reality. That's good. So recognize that you're doing a service to them by selling. So key number 4, this is the shocking truth of what happens when you make money online. A lot of people don't realize this. And I learned this from Dave MacArthur, who was one of the first millionaire mentors of mine. He made over $12 million on the back of one signature speech. He taught me how to sell from stage and how to speak to audiences online, over the phone, through Zoom, through seminars. And I learned so much about how to sell from stage. And he would give like 3,000 presentations selling these health programs. And I had the privilege to travel around with him from speaking tours. And I would speak at some of the stages. We'd share and we'd talk about it in between. But one thing that he would often say is, money isn't everything, but it's right up there with oxygen. You need it to survive. And I realized there's a lot of truth to that. But one thing that this conversation we had, and one of those times we were traveling that I'll never forget, he's like, Enoch, one thing you want to understand is that in this health business, every dollar that you make represents a life that is transformed. So your income level is a direct reflection of your impact. So if you knew that every dollar you make, like think about it. If you are selling, let's say you're selling some supplements, and if someone's not getting value, if their health isn't improving, if they're not reaching their goals, they're not going to continue to buy your supplements. They're not going to continue to buy your program. If they're getting coaching, and they're growing, they're not going to cancel. If they have a subscription, let's say you have a community program, someone pays $47 a month to be a part of this community, and you're speaking one-to-many. They're not going to continue to renew their subscription month after month, if they're not finding value from it. So the income that you have, the retention you have, is a direct reflection of the lives that you are impacting. So he asked me the question, when you understand that, how much money do you want to make a month? Knowing that how much you make is going to impact people's lives. And I was like, well, in that case, I want to make as much as I can. And I think a lot of times we get this idea that I was watching this video, and there's this entrepreneur, and he was saying that he made $40,000 a month, and he employed a few people, And someone in the comments was like, at what point do you get too greedy that you're making $40,000? Who needs $40,000? And this guy was really upset about that. And sometimes people think that somehow it's the amount that you're making that determines how greedy you are, but that's not really the case, because what's fascinating to me is in every area of life, we want as much as we can. Can we take the slide off, please? Except for finances. So let's say you have a daughter, and I were to ask you, well, how smart do you want your daughter to be? You'd be like, as smart as she possibly can. But when it's like financially, then it's like, well, I don't want too much money. I don't want to be greedy. I don't want to just have too much, right? It's like, no, I want as much as I possibly can. And it's like, sure, you don't mean that. No, I mean, surely I mean that, because if I were to ask your daughter, well, what about how happy do you want your daughter to be? And she's like, oh, just enough happiness to be comfortable, not too happy, don't want her to be too like prideful or annoying or something. It's like, no father, no mother is going to say that about their daughter. You want her to be as happy as she can. Well, how healthy do you want her to be? As healthy as she can. And that is like, in every area of life, we want to grow as much as we possibly can, except for financially. It's like, why? That doesn't make sense. God has created us with an infinite path of development, a growth that can expand beyond ourselves. I don't want just enough for myself and my family to be comfortable. I want more than enough. I want to be able to provide for the needs of others. I want to be able to have more than enough to contribute to causes I care about, to scale the impact of the people's lives that I'm able to serve. And we just recently made an investment. It was a rather large investment into a software company that allows us to provide our clients access to a complete all-in-one marketing platform. Literally, over the last few years, we have paid hundreds of dollars a month for just multiple platforms that will do a fraction of what we do. And before, our business was fragmented with different software, like we'll have like a social media scheduling software or an account booking software, a website software, a blogging software that's different than the sales funnels because they don't communicate very well. And then you need to pay for another subscription to have all these things talk together. It's been a mess. But by bringing all of our business softwares all in one platform, we invested in a software that allows us to provide for free to every one of our students so that they don't have to go through the mess and the headache that we've done. And they can now host their online courses there. They can do their coaching there. They can take payments. They can book sales consultation calls. They can host their websites and sales funnels. They can set up forms. All these subscriptions that we have been paying thousands of dollars for are now able to be consolidated, and we can give for free to all of our students. Now, would we have been able to do that if our business wasn't profitable? No, not at all. We've taken some of the profit in our business, we've reinvested in a solution like this because we're always looking for ways to make our clients' lives better, easier, faster, simpler, to eliminate headache, so we could just simplify the process and cover the expenses. Like, I'd rather front some of the expense so that it could be easier for them to get your message to the masses. But we couldn't do that if we weren't able to scale our income. Does that make sense? By making more money, we're able to scale the impact and the service, the solutions, the opportunity, and the resources we can dedicate to make your lives easier. And that's what it's like in business. In business, if you're changing people's health, the more money you make, you can scale your team. You can have the tech support. You can have the marketing support. You can have the coaches that help you line things up. You can have the virtual assistant that's able to do some of the administrative stuff. It's by scaling, by surrounding yourself with people who love doing what you hate, who play at the things that you find just exhausting. But it's by increasing your income, you're able to increase the impact. Does that make sense? Type impact in the chat below if you could start to see the connection here and you're ready to impact more people. So back on the slide, one thing you want to consider is how much money would you like to make a month? And I believe it's very important to put a dollar amount, to actually think, what is your ideal lifestyle? What would you like to do? Have a vision for your finances. Without a vision, the people perish. So you could identify how much you'd like to earn. And then a second number, a different number, I call this the financial independence number. What is your financial independence? Because a lot of times people realize you don't need an extravagant amount of money to drastically change your life, to reach financial independence. And what is financial independence? I would define financial independence as when your passive income meets or exceeds your monthly living expenses. And understanding this equation, this number, is what helped me to reach financial independence in my early 20s. That now my time isn't required to directly create that income. I'm able to do the things that I love with the people that I love, live where I desire. As long as I have a Wi-Fi connection, I'm able to have an income to do what I believe God's called me to do. It's opened the doors for me to serve at capacities that I otherwise couldn't do if I was still trading time for money. So with your financial independence, map out what is your monthly living expense. Think about your housing, your food, whatever insurances you pay, or think about some of like utilities. Think about what are the payments that you have monthly, add it up. And let's say it's $5,000 a month. Well, congratulations. Let's say you have, that's 2 sales of $3,000 and you've got financial independence. You've got your business is covering your monthly expenses. And this can be really powerful. So, but it starts by understanding that every dollar you make represents a life that is transformed. When you understand this key to selling, then it unlocks some new heights that you otherwise couldn't do because we're blocked. It's like our mind has this mental lock and chain that hinders us from actually making a sale when we believe that we're taking something from them. We only feel bad like we're taking something when we're so upset, when we're focused too much on what we get. But selling is not about what we get. Selling is about what value we are giving. Recognize you are a gift giver. You have a gift. You have something of value and to offer. You're making an offer. You're not forcing anyone to make a decision. Your job is to uncover the value so that people can see and desire to invest or exchange $1 in their pockets for the value that you have. And when there's exchange, both people walk away with more than they had before, and everybody wins. So the fifth key to selling while serving is understanding the 4 levels of selling your health products or programs. In fact, there are 4 levels of selling. As a health educator, when you understand these 4 levels, it really changes the game for you. So the first level of selling is called self-selling. This is the single most important, the most profitable sale you will ever make in your life is selling yourself, because this is where you're leveling up your skills. And this is where if you're not sold, you won't be able to sell others. In order for you to move others, you must be moved. In order for you to influence others, you must be influenced. I learned that I had to influence myself in order for me to learn to influence others. I started with friends that had no interest in selling, no interested in speaking, monetizing your knowledge, using your mouth to make money. That was not at all what was on their radar or thoughts at all. And they would laugh at people who even did that, thought that like that doesn't even count for making honorable living. So what I did is I invested in courses, I invested in mentorships, coaching programs, and I started feeding my mind. I'm over there changing a transmission and with grease on my hands and my head is on concrete, and I'm listening to podcasts and courses that are helping me to change my financial future and help me to understand what are the skills that I could monetize to pay the bills. And I started acquiring high income skills. I sold myself first on the vision, and I learned to upgrade my environment, because I've learned that we are a product of our environment. One of the best principles that I've learned is to put myself in an environment that normalizes the achievements that I desire to make. And by doing that, putting myself in the room, a lot of times you got to cut a check to get in the room with people who are going in a similar direction or living or doing similar things. It's amazing to see what gets to be done. So we've been putting together a community right now for 2026. We're doubling down on a community of connecting and creating a network of health educators so that there could be community-oriented brainstorming and solutions and helping, and actually people who are monetizing their health knowledge, all supporting each other together. And this next year in 2026 is going to be amazing. I'm looking forward to it. But that's part of like this self-selling. So that's the first level of selling. The second level of selling is what I call one-on-one selling. This is when you craft an offer. This is when you have some sort of offer or solution that you can now monetize. And what I started doing, I knocked on over 1,000 doors selling books, and here was an example of some of our cooking classes, and we had DVDs here and some of the health literature that I was doing. And we did these cooking classes, we shared with people, and I found that one thing that was interesting is we recorded those classes, we put them on YouTube, and our event replays had reached 1,000 times more people than those who were actually in the room, which was like a little nudge in the back of my mind of God saying, go tell it to the world, go publish it online. And there's a lot of these mini like little reminders that publishing the internet is where these people are making decisions. And so I was on so many sales calls at one point that my team saw where I was taking a nap. They took a photo because they thought it was funny. They're like, look, Enoch's doing so many sales calls, he's even taking them in his sleep. And they was just being playful there. But the one-on-one selling is valuable because it teaches you how to recognize patterns. You start to recognize that there's different things that people say, common objections, fears, challenges, and there's patterns that people have. And once you recognize how to influence people one-on-one, it also allows you to the third level of selling, which is one-to-many selling. This is where business gets very interesting. This is where you have an offer plus an audience. This is where things are able to really scale. In fact, Russell Brunson, who grew ClickFunnels, his company, from $0 to $300 million a year on the back of a signature speech. And this is, I've had the opportunity to share the stage with him on a couple of occasions, and it's been a blessing. I learned a lot of marketing from him. And one thing he did is he hosted this training where he broke down how he made $3.2 million in 90 minutes. And in this training, each person paid about $15,000 to be in the room. And he was going through this event where he was speaking at this 10X growth conference. And while he was there was 9,000 people in the room. And he spoke for 20 minutes. And if you were to do 90 minutes times 9,000, that's about 810,000 minutes. And if you think about how long it would take, if he were to do these one-on-one sales conversations with 9,000 people, it would have taken him about a year and a half of back-to-back-to-back sales calls, one-on-one, if working a 40-hour work week. 6.5 years he was able to figure out in 90 minutes. And he was able to make $3 million doing that. So one lesson that we learned from this is that health educators who are making 1,000 times more money than you, they're not working 1,000 times harder. They're not working 1,000 times longer. They're not putting in 1,000 times more efforts. They're not working harder. They're working higher, in a higher level of selling. Because the key to getting ahead financially in your business is not by working hard. Hard work will not guarantee that you'll make more money. Hard work will guarantee that it'll make you more tired. The key to making more money is working higher, not harder. Higher forms of leverage, higher levels of selling. And this is why one-to-many selling is really powerful to me, but it's not even, this is the second highest level of selling. If you want to know the number one highest level of selling is what I would call the auto webinar. Auto webinars are very powerful because this is when you have the offer, then you have an audience, and you have automation. Automation is what scales your message and gets it far and wide. So when Russell was doing this training, he was showing what's even more amazing is that last month when he was doing this training, he had 42,983 people register for his webinar, where before he had 9,000 in the room. If he can do 3.2 million with 9,000, imagine how much more you could do with 42,000 people who shows up for a 90-minute presentation. And why this is so powerful is because what we're talking about is automation. This is happening in the background. These are people registering, showing up while he's going off and doing what he does with his day. It doesn't require him to actively travel across the nation to show up, stay in a hotel, and then present. And one thing I learned from Warren Buffett when I was in my early 20s that really stuck with me is he said that if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you'll be working until you die. And this is finding out how to disconnect your income generation from your time. And automation has never been easier to be able to create in your business. In fact, with our Contact Keeper, this new software that we invested in, it makes it so much easier to be able to automatically load up the webinars so that you could put your signature speech on an automated webinar and have people register and show up. So it makes it so much easier where you don't have to pay. We used to pay $300 a month just to get access to something like that, but we give it for free for our students. So you can have these webinars in place. You can have the websites that will automatically funnel them in. And it's amazing. But how many of you would like to learn how to make money while you sleep? Type sleep in the chat below. Because, I mean, I'll never forget, and I don't think I'll ever take, by God's grace, I hope I never take for granted, but it's still exciting when I get to wake up and I see those Stripe notifications and I just see things coming through. I'm like, wow, that is amazing. Today I saw a notification for $4,000 because of our websites that we have where people can send money. And it was just like, when you see these notifications, $100, oh, there's a monthly subscription going through, $1,000, $2,000 there, and just different prices going through, it's just like, this is amazing, because it used to be you had to work so much harder to be able to do that, but now it's by understanding that you're not getting paid for your time, you're getting paid for the results, the value that you're adding, and being able how you're able to transform people's lives. That's what people pay for. In fact, at that mastermind that I mentioned, I joined, each one of us who paid $55,000 to be a part of, I was able to meet Kiana Dagnon. She was attending over there. She spoke at this other event. There's 6,000 people where I was introduced to her. She's been featured on national television on multiple occasions and sharing her messages and courses. I had the privilege to be able to have dinner with her and some friends. And I was asking her some questions, and throughout our interactions, one thing that she showed me is she had this $2,000 course that is selling through an automated webinar. She actually pulled out her phone, showed me the Stripe notification, and she is averaging around $900,000 a month for the last 8 months through this automated webinar, selling an automated course that when people buy the course, they go through and it doesn't require any more time for her to deliver. She recorded it, she set it up, she has ads funneling to it, and people buy, they get access to a course, they go through it, and she has a ton of testimonials of people's lives that are being transformed by learning the skills and the knowledge that she has captured through this course. And some of this stuff seems hard to believe, but I've actually seen it with my own eyes, and I've experienced it at different capacities with our business. And it's just this is why I'm thrilled to be able to help health educators. If out of anyone on the planet, I want to help health educators to learn how to set up their business in a way that is able to scale their impact and their income, to give them the income that could reach more people and do it sustainably. Because I'm sick and tired of people who have a life-changing health message, who's being a best kept secret, and their message is falling flat, not reaching the people that they could be reaching. And I want to change that. We're on a mission to empower a movement of health educators to get your message to the masses. So key number 6, this is one of the best things that you could do for your clients that will increase their success, their commitment, and attention towards your advice. Have you ever poured out your heart in sharing some amazing advice? If they took this to heart, their life would be changed. They wouldn't recognize themselves later. You gave them exactly what to do. They were asking some questions and you gave them this free advice, right? And then you follow up with them a few days later, a week later, like, hey, how much progress did you make? Did you do something? What's an update? And they're like, oh, I didn't really do anything with it. And then your heart sinks. You're like, what? I poured my heart, my soul, my life into that, only to find out they're not even doing anything with it. That sinking feeling is so frustrating. I remember doing the seminars and the trainings and sharing with them, only to see that, yeah, people would be engaged, they're excited when they're learning, but then when it comes to actually doing it, it's so disappointing. until I understood this switch. Jesus recognized a principle. He knew that the heart follows the wallet. When he said in Matthew 6:21, "For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." In other words, that when people invest, they become invested. They're invested in the work, they're focused in the work, and they pursue that, they value it. They tend to value things that they paid for. But when we get all this stuff for free, then it's not as helpful. In fact, like, one of the best things that I do for my clients is I charge them a lot of money to work with me. And you might say, wait, Enoch, you mean that's one of the best things you do for you? No. One of the best things I do for my clients is I charge them a lot of money to work with me. Why? Because one thing you do when you charge premium price for your health advice is you effectively take them off of the market. When people are buying cheap stuff, they're buying your cheap thing and your competitor's cheap thing and that person's cheap thing, and they're getting all this conflicting advice, and they've bought all these things which were intended to be self-help, really just ends up being shelf-help, and it collects dust on their digital shelf, and they're not able to do anything with it because they get so exhausted and overwhelmed by all these different stuff. But when you charge a premium, my clients are like, look, I paid good money to show up here, to get the results, to pay attention. I see a much higher implementation, higher show up rate, higher engagement. People apply the principles. They don't just like buy it and forget about it because it's so cheaply priced that they're not able to actually have skin in the game to get it done. So in other words, what we find is that people who pay a little attention. And people who pay a lot tend to pay a lot of attention. But one thing that you'll see is that if you are the best, nobody expects you to be the cheapest. And if you're the cheapest, no one expects you to be the best. So if you really believe that you can help people to transform their life, their health, their relationship, their mind, their body, then charge like it. Because one of the biggest objections that people have to investing in your programs is if you're selling a premium vehicle at penny prices, then that's going to create concerns in people's minds. One of the first things I'll do with our clients is a lot of times we'll be like, all right, well, let's raise your price. Not just raise the price, but let's raise the value and raise your skill set and being able to communicate that value. But sometimes people, the reason why health educators have a hard time selling it is because they're charging too low. And people know that the drastic change that you're promising is far more valuable than what you are charging, and that makes the prospect think that you don't actually believe in what you're selling. So I'll give you an example. Let's look at a Ferrari. If a stranger walked up to you on the street and was like, hey, see that Ferrari? Yeah. And you know that Ferrari usually goes for $247,000, and they say, well, I'll give it to you for $2,000 and it's yours. What would you think if a stranger offered you this Ferrari for $2,000? Like, comment below. Tell me what would go through your mind. Some people say, is it a scam? Is a car stolen? Am I going to go to jail for doing it? What's wrong with it? It's broken. It must be a lemon. Maybe like there's all sorts of objections and concerns that come up in the mind simply because of the price is too low. When you're selling a premium vehicle for penny prices, that creates confusion in your buyer. And coaching, mentorship is a premium vehicle in the monetizing your knowledge world. This is a premium. I'm not even just talking about one-on-one coaching. Group coaching where you're able to transform people's lives is a premium vehicle. Whereas if you're selling it for like $100 an hour or $500 for X amount of weeks, like that is so low. So what I recommend is charge at least $3,000. You could do more, but at least $3,000. And as you start with that, you'll be amazed how many people are willing to pay. And in fact, that was a conversation we had with Hollis and Shantoya. One thing that we shared with them is to raise their prices, and they were scared. They were afraid that their current buyers would stop buying and that it would be harder to sell. But they came on our coaching call afterwards and said, you know what? We raised our prices and we sold more products both on our website and offline than we ever did before. And our existing buyers continued to pay those premium prices, and they were just so excited about it because they were afraid that that was going to like affect their business negatively, but it actually grew their business, improved their business, and all they did was raise their prices. And this is a lever in business. A lot of times it's these few tweaks that lead to the biggest peaks. It's not a drastic change with lots of time. It's just a simple business optimization levers. And as a business consultant, what our job is, for me and my team, is we look into your business and see what are your opportunities and what is the fastest path to cash. How can we help you to see where you are, where do you want to be, and what are the resources that we know of to help you to simplify the gap, to close that gap the fastest. In fact, I saw a news segment, and they were talking about how the average salary needed to live comfortably in America. And I don't know their definition of comfortably, but what they were saying for single adults, it's about $94,000 a year. And the national average throughout America, it's about $93,000 a year. And this was like before the inflations of COVID and all that stuff. So it's probably higher by now. And they said that if there's 2 working adults with 2 children, then the average salary is about $200,000. I mean, that's just to live comfortably. And not even to mention to employ and provide for the homes of others. So let's show you, is it okay if I show you the math of how you can live at least comfortably in America? Can I break down to you what the 6-figure math looks like if in a health education business? Yeah? All right, so then what it looks like is, let's say that you just had an offer, a premium mentorship program. Let's say we helped you to craft a program, showed you what consists of an irresistible offer that people like to buy, because we've seen them buy again and again, and what things sell and what things don't, who struggles to sell and who doesn't, and how they're wording it. So we helped you to craft a $3,000 offer. How many sales would you need to make? Would it be surprising to hear that you only need 3 sales, which is 3 sales a month? You're making $9,000 a month, and then with $9,000 times 12 months in a year, congratulations, you're making $108,000 a year. That you now have a 6-figure business with just 3 sales a month. And it's a lot of times people don't realize it doesn't require a whole lot of sales or even a whole lot of money to be able to live generously in their business. When you charge a premium for your health advice, you could even be pretty bad at marketing and have less sales, but still be able to focus on giving your clients better results, serving them at the higher level, and being able to really support them in a way that financially makes sense for you and them. So, do you think that out of 8 billion people in this world, that it's in the realm of possibility for you to be able to just find 3 people in an entire month who would be interested in paying you to help transform their life? And if we were able to guide you through the process like we have with our other clients, do you think that you'd be able to find them out of 3 billion people? Yeah. So that's what 6-figure math looks like. But what about 7-figure? Let's say you didn't just want to live comfortably for yourself. You wanted more than enough so you could provide for others and contribute to causes you care about. Let's look at the $1 million math. What does that look like? You just add a 0. So instead of doing 3 sales a month, you could start doing 30 sales a month. Can we plug in this computer, please? I appreciate that. So with only 30, so basically you do more of what worked to get those 3 sales and do less of what's not working, and then you're able to scale that. And as you start having 30, you go from 3 sales to 30 sales, and really before even thinking about 30 sales, that's going to equate to $90,000 a month. In 12 months, that's $1,080,000 a year. Now you've got a $1 million business a year. But really, you don't need to think about just starting with 30 million. In fact, with 30 sales. In fact, really, all you got to do is focus on getting your first sale. Because if, like Dr. Kendra Lee, when she got her first sale, then I believe it was the very next time she learned what to do to craft that offer, what to say on the call. And then her next call, she was able to sign up 3 people who wanted to join her $3,000 offer. And she was able to sell that. Reginae went through a similar experience. She got her first sale, and then did more of what worked. And then the next time she signed up 2 people in the same day. She had her first $6,000 day that she's never had like that before, from 2 sales. And this is what happens where you learn how to make the first sale, then you do more of what works. Let's start getting $10,000 a month and then start scaling you to the next level. And there's phases of your business. And we did an interview with Hollis and Shantoya, and we posted it on YouTube. I would recommend that you watch it. This is an assignment that I would give you that I think would be worth your time. It's their journey of how my students raised their prices and sold more than ever. It was talking about what they did to raise their price, what the experience was like. It was covering through some of the challenges they faced. It's just like a raw testimony of what they went through and practical advice as they were going through that process. I think you'll get a lot from that. So I want you to recognize too, with my clients, because I sold them into our program and we were able to guide them through that process, then they were able to break through to new levels that they haven't experienced before. So if I did not sell to them, I could not serve them. So if you get one thing from this talk, know that selling is not something you do to someone. Selling is something you do for someone. And that leads to the 6th key, which is people who pay attention. And the more you charge, the more they tend to pay attention. So the 7th key to selling while serving, the last one, is recognizing why all business models are not created equally. And understanding this can save you from a world of headache. A lot of people, they have a great business, but not a great business model. And it's the model that is limiting them the most. So let me ask you a question. If you make $1 million, are you wealthy? Yes or no? Let me know in the chat, put it down. If you make $1 million, are you wealthy? I would say that it depends. Because if you made $1 million working at McDonald's, and let's say you made $25,000 a year and you worked for 40 years, well then congratulations, you made $1 million. But are you wealthy? Maybe, probably not. And here's a photo of a man who's celebrating his 90th birthday at McDonald's. He's the oldest, he's the longest employee of McDonald's over in Europe. And what we see is that wealth is measured more in speed than in dollars. So one thing that I learned from Myron Golden, he was a millionaire mentor of mine, and he shared that it's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time than it is to make a little money in a long period of time. He helped me to have my first $40,000 day. He helped me to learn the skills that led to making $26,500 from a 45-minute speech that I gave. And it was like, it wasn't until I understood this concept that things started to really take up momentum in my business. I stopped focusing on things that would take a lot of energy to make a little money, and I started to focus more on serving people and solving more valuable problems that would allow me to make a lot of money in a short period of time, and it's a lot less energy. And I'll prove this to you in a few moments. The reason why it's easier to make a lot of money in a shorter amount of time is because I want you to imagine you're walking. Let's say you're going to walk for 12 minutes. It's 12 minutes. If you aim to walk for 12 minutes, you will probably cover about half a mile. Not a lot. Now imagine if you're biking, and if you aim to bike for 12 minutes, you'll probably cover about 3 miles. Not bad, but let's say you're going to drive the same amount of time, 12 minutes. Now you're going to go about 12 miles. Well, now we're starting to go somewhere. But let's say you change the vehicle, and instead you're going to fly. You're going to fly for 12 minutes. And if you flew for 12 minutes, only God knows how many miles you'd go, but the point is you're going to go far. And the reason why it's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time is because you pick a different vehicle. But all of these vehicles take the same amount of time. It's not time that helps to make more money or have greater success. It's the opportunity of the vehicle that you pick to build your business that's going to propel you the furthest or hold you back the most. So you want to choose your business vehicle wisely. And here's an example of a health educator who's in a marketing community that I'm a part of. And he posted this win that he was sharing. He's in the health coaching niche. He teaches people how to bike, how to bike properly. He posted this video, like using these lighthouse content principles we teach. He had bad lighting, bad camera. You only had about 160 views in his video, but those views booked him 20 calls. He signed up 9 people to a $6,000 health coaching program, and he made $48,000 in 1 week. And he was sharing this as an example of what happens when you pick the right business vehicle. And in this case, he used bicycling. But what we see is that the 7th key to selling while serving is choose your business vehicle wisely. And I would recommend there are multiple ways to monetize your health knowledge online. And while many of them work, some of them work better than others. And what we often do is we consult with health educators to recommend the best vehicle that makes the most sense for their dream, their goal, where they're at. And I was having a consultation just yesterday with someone who's wondering what vehicle for them to pick. And as I helped to clarify, she's like, I've never even thought of that as an option. That makes so much sense. And she's like, well, I've just been by myself and it's kind of hard. It's nice to be listened to. It's nice to have the help to kind of piece things together. And I know that a lot of us, it's not that you're missing the health knowledge. You have the message. It's just knowing what model or vehicle to deliver that message in. And that's what we like to do. So your assignment today, I want you to go live in the challenge. I want you to share with others. Write a review. I want you to record a video testimonial of what your experience has been in the challenge. Would you recommend that other people attend? What has it been like for you? And if you wouldn't recommend, I mean, you could say that too, but I want you to do a video review and post it in the group. And I want you to give a written review too. And if you need, you could reevaluate your prices to see if there's something for you to raise, and find and share what your financial independence number is. It's a lot of times a lot lower than what we think it needs to be. And then subscribe to my YouTube channel, Enoch Leffingwell. You'll see me on there with, you can subscribe to that channel. We've got about 800 subscribers and we release new videos every week, helping you to understand health marketing principles like this. And in fact, we actually get together on Zoom every Tuesday. Every Tuesday on Zoom, I answer some questions, do Q&A. It's free. Anybody can attend. And I record my YouTube videos there and then we post them. And I think that if you have other questions beyond the challenge and between challenges, we do this once a month, then that's also a great way to plug in and get some connection and guidance if you'd like. And upgrade to the VIP if you haven't already, where you could get your questions answered, and we could dive into that. So some book recommendations I have, if you want to get better at selling and selling from stage or public speaking, some of the things we're talking about, I would recommend Copywriting Secrets. This copywriting simply means persuasive words that sell. It's writing written words that can sell and influence, whether that's words on your websites, your emails, your product descriptions. It's just what are your text messages? That's copywriting. The next book is Expert Secrets. This is by Russell Brunson. He shows you how to turn your calling into your career, how to build a movement around your message and your mission. It's really insightful. It's my favorite book out of this list. And then The Storyteller's Secret. This is Carmine Gallo. I like any book that I've read so far from Carmine Gallo. He talks about storytelling and how you can be better at sharing stories in a way that can engage minds. And he breaks down some of the top speakers and shows what are the storytelling techniques and messages and systems that you could apply when you're speaking, and it will improve you. I've listened to that multiple times on audiobook. And the next one is from the same author, Carmine Gallo, Talk Like TED, where he analyzes some of the top, most viral, most successful TED Talks and identifies that there are 9 public speaking secrets that each of these most successful TED Talks and really speakers in the world, they tend to use in their presentations. And when you could start incorporating those into your talks, you will be a better speaker. And what we've already found, that one-to-many level 3 and 4 of selling is just, it's really powerful. So what we've covered is the 7 keys to selling while serving. That's today. Tomorrow, we've got a very special study. It's different. It's a Bible study. And what we're going to be doing is, we're not doing the VIP tomorrow. We will do it on Sunday, but we're going to do a Bible study, and many people have said that tomorrow's training is their favorite training out of the whole challenge. That's where people get some of the biggest breakthroughs. If you can come live, it's going to be 9 a.m. Pacific time. This is when we start on Zoom, and you're welcome to join us. And if not, catch the replay, because you don't want to miss tomorrow's training. We're going to be talking about I don't remember the special title we gave it, but the subject is about the untold secrets of long-term success, and we're going to be going through the Bible of what God says about that subject, and it's going to be eye-opening for many people. So I look forward to seeing you, friends. We just wrapping up day 2 out of 5 of our High Income Health Expert Challenge. Look forward to serving you. Our final day is on Wednesday. The replays will be available until Wednesday. So this is a live event. We are live. This isn't a lifetime course that you have access to whenever. This is an event, has a start and a finish, and on Wednesday, the replays are being taken down. But until then, you can share it with whoever you want. You could watch it as many times as you want. You could replay some of these things, and feel free to send me DMs on Messenger. Facebook is one of the best ways to reach me. I'd be happy to engage, answer questions, help support you along the way. But until next time, friends, remember, God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. Have a great day. God bless.